So to do the Fibonacci square stitch, you're going to begin with a multiple of 2 plus 1 chain. So the beginning expression is 2x plus 1, but the x must be an even number. I need a square that's 2 inches by 2 inches. So I'm simply going to make chains until the series of chains reaches 2 inches. I'm using this thread. And you're keeping count of the number of chains that you're making as you make them. I've made 14 chains. I'm going to check to see if it reaches 2 inches. It hasn't. I'm checking again at 20 chains, and it seems like I need to remove a chain or 2. So now I have 19 chains, and it does reach 2 inches. Right, because 19 is an odd number and I need for my x value to be even, I'm simply going to minus 1 to find my x. So my x will be 18 chains, but I'm going to leave the extra chain on the hook because I need it anyway, and it's going to be my middle point. I've placed a pin on the 19th chain because that's going to be where the corner is, and the length of the edge of the square is going to be 18 chains, so I need to make another 18 on the other side of the pin. Now to start the first row, I'm going to make a standing treble. And then I'm going to continue making individual trebles until I arrive near the pin, which is where a corner will be. If you're using like a bigger size thread and a bigger gauge of needle, then you're probably going to use less chains to make the same size of square. Instead of 18 chains per edge, you're probably going to have like maybe 15 chains or even 12 to make like the same 2 inch by 2 inch square. Essentially, I'm going to make x minus 2 individual trebles. So my x was 18, and so I'm going to be making 16 individual trebles, and then when I arrive at the corner, which is soon, I'll make a cluster of 5. So now I'm at the corner. I have 2 empty chains to the right of the pin, and then 2 empty chains to the left of it, and then I've put the pin in the middle chain, which is the +1 in our expression, in our starting expression. So now I'm going to make 5 trebles, but I'm not going to finish them until I make the 5th treble. So as I finish the 5th treble, I'm going to finish all 5, and I'm going to pass it through all the loops on the hook. So that's my cluster of 5 in the corner. I should also have 18 individual trebles, or 16 I should say, on this other edge of the square as well. To move to the next row, I'm going to make another standing treble, and to go up each row, that's how I'll do it. And for this row, I'm going to have 14 individual trebles before I arrive at the middle or the corner. And I'll show you what I do for larger work when I don't want to keep count of the individual trebles. There's a bit of like a hint, so that I know which 5 trebles to take as I arrive at the corner, so that way I could just do the individual trebles mindlessly without counting, and then when I arrive at the corner, I make my cluster of 5 in the correct place, and then I continue making the individual trebles mindlessly without counting. And it's very helpful for larger work when you have trebles of over 50 in count. So I'm near the corner. I don't know if you could see, but there's a large gap right here, and the space is larger than the other chains around it. It's larger in size, and so I know that that large gap is only going to be my 2nd treble in the cluster of 5, and so I'm simply taking 1 unfinished treble to the right of that big gap. I'll take another unfinished treble in the large gap, which is the 2nd treble in the cluster of 5, and then I take 3 more, and that's my cluster of 5. And I'll show you when I finish this cluster why that gap is only the 2nd treble in the cluster of 5. So I have 5 unfinished trebles on my hook, and I'm going to finish all of them as I finish the last one, and then I'm going to make 2 more trebles on the left of the cluster. So now for the next row, for the following row, these 5 chains are going to make my next cluster, but you can see that there's a large gap right here, and that's only the 2nd chain, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the large gap is actually like just the 2nd. When I'm facing the other way, coming from the other side, when I begin the next row, this large gap is only going to be the second treble in the cluster of 5. So that's how I know where to take the cluster, even if I'm not keeping track of the number of trebles that I make. Right, but this row should have 14 individual trebles, and so I should also have 14 on this edge of the square as well. And I'm going to continue doing that until I arrive at the last stitch. My starting X was 18, so I believe I should have 9 rows, which is half of X. My complete square should only be 9 rows of stitches. If in the beginning the number of chains that you made to arrive at the length of square that you're looking to make, if the number of chains is even, then you found your X, and if it's odd, then simply minus 1 to find your X. Right, and that X value is very important throughout the entire project, because it will determine the number of individual trebles, because that X value will decrease by 2 every row. Right, but you're starting with the number of chains that you're starting with, because you're doing two edges of the square. You're starting with an expression or number of chains that is 2x, which is the 2 edges of the square, plus 1, which is just the corner. And what I like about the stitch is that as you progress in the work, it gets easier, because you have less and less work to do as you increase in rows. I'm going to do my last row, which is just one cluster of 5, and you're always going to remain with, if you do the square, your last row will always be one cluster of 5. And then I'm going to finish by closing the cluster of 5. So there I have a square that's 2 inches in length. I've also made a 9-inch square. And a 7-inch square. Extra chains on one side, just to see what it will be like. I also have a larger square, which is 16 inches in length. And with this bag, I played around with the overlap in a bigger way because I'm making a duffel bag. And so for the duffel bag, I have 2 circles, which I have here, which has like a circumference of 25 inches. And then I have like a large rectangle that will be 16 inches by 25 inches. And so the 16-inch square is gonna be where the opening is, where the zipper will be. And so I did like some extra chains on one side of the square. To be fair, or to be exact, I did 9 extra chains because 9 chains is about 1 inch with the size thread that I'm using. And so this overlap will create some privacy when I install the zipper. Right? I'll show you how I arrange the squares to make the 16-inch by 25-inch rectangle. So for the blue thread, I use the color 793 and the universal crochet thread. And for the green, I used 585, and then the white is 502. And this is how I arranged my rectangle. I have a 16 by 16 inch square here with a little 9 chains extra because I added an inch so that I get privacy when I attach my zipper, which by the way the zipper is white. And then I have a 9-inch square here in the color green, and then 16 plus 9 is 25. So this length is going to be my 25 inches. I have a 7 by 7 inch square. I have the 2 inch by 2 inch square, which I just made. And then I have this odd 2 inch by 5 inch rectangle, which is just for the sake of the pattern and the color blocking. It's not a perfect Fibonacci square, but these are the dimensions that I wanted to work with, the 16 by 25. So this is what I came up with when I sketched on paper. I'm gonna attach all these rectangles using the white crochet thread. I also have, I showed you before, the 2 circles, each of a circumference of 25 inches. So one will be on this side and the other will be on the other side. And then I have my handles and my straps. So I have 2 2 short handles and then 1 long strap, and I'll show you how I made it. So the shorter handles is the same pattern, is the same stitch. I think I did because I wanted the handles to be about 14 or 15 inches in length. So I did, yeah. So they're about like 8.5 inches. And then I just added 2 inches because when I attached the handles to the bag, there's, you know, I wanted like a 2 or 3 inch overlap. Yeah, so I think so I wanted my handles to be 14 inches in length. I wanted my handles to be 14 inches in length, so half of that is 7, and then I just added an extra like 1.5 inches, so that when I attach the handles to the surface of the bag, I'll have some, you know, that's how much is gonna overlap, the 1.5 inches. And I did 2 short handles like that, and then for the longer strap, I think I wanted it to be 28 inches in like the actual strap itself. Half of that is 14, and then I just have an extra 2.5 inches again, so that it could overlap like this, and then I'll crochet with slip stitches all the way around and secure the strap onto the fabric of the bag. And so I began with the same stitch, and I did the number of chains to the length that I wanted, but I only did, for the long strap, I only did 4 rows of the square, and then I cut the thread. And for the shorter straps, I only did 3 rows of the square, and then I cut the strap, and that's how I made my handles. So I'm gonna attach the these squares together to form my larger 16 by 25 inch rectangle, and then I'll show you. So to connect these squares, what I did is I placed the fabric with the faces together, and I connect them on the underside, and by doing that I have like a hidden seam where you can see the stitch on the right side of the fabric. I could have done it on the right side, and that way you'd have this like sporty white chain stitch running through in between each of these squares, and it would have been or rectangles, because I do have a odd 2 by 5 rectangle, but and it would have looked, you know, cute and sporty, but I decided to do it with like a hidden seam on the underside. I've attached the handles, and so I'll just finish the seam up all the way across, and then I'll finish my 16 by 25 rectangle. I'm going to do the same thing to attach the circles on either side. I'm going to pin it and then do a running chain stitch on the wrong side of the fabric, and then after I've done that, I'll turn it inside out. Well, I have the zipper to install, but then I'll turn it inside out and you'll see the finished shell. I installed the zipper using regular sewing thread, polyester sewing thread, and I also added these snap closures so that I get like extra privacy and extra security, so that after I've zipped the bag up, then I like enclose the zippers and overlock, like it's hiding the zipper, and kind of just